Hi, in this screencast I want to show you how to use the distribution tool on BNC Web. I think it's really quite a useful tool for us. And to follow on from the last screencast about simple searches, we're going to look at the same kinds of searches and how that works out. So instead of having to rewrite them, what we've got here is a nice little thing called query history. This will tell you all the things you've looked for recently. The first one I want to look at is step up. Now don't click here. What we want to do is click here, and that should bring up the same results. I don't need to do the whole query again. You'll see stepping, steps, stepped. Okay, that's perfect. Just as a little aside, I want to show you something that's really quite interesting. You might be curious about which form is most common, and what we can do here is check it out in frequency breakdown. This will tell us that stepped up is the most frequent, closely followed by step up. Stepping up, steps up are much less common for this verb. Anyway, that's just an aside. What we're interested in really is the distribution. So this will tell us which kind of text registers step up is most commonly found in. First of all, the first thing we notice is step up is, generally speaking, more common in written than in spoken texts. Now, this is frequency per million words, so they've divided this one by this to get this figure, and then divided by a million too. Okay, and so that's written versus spoken. The thing we were interested in the other day was showing whether it was more common in newspapers than other texts, and as we can see here, newspapers is the text type which is where you're most likely to find step up. And interestingly, spoken conversation is the text type where you're least likely to find it, and that's really a very big difference. Okay, anything else that's worth mentioning here? That is quite interesting. If we're looking at written to be spoken, like this is things like the news, I imagine, then it's even more common. And world affairs, as you'd expect, journalism talks about world affairs, it's quite common there. Okay, there's lots of information here, but we won't go into it too much right now. So anyway, that's the information for step up. There are some other words we looked at before. Again, let's go to query history. What you might be interested in knowing is whether these contractions are also are representative of conversational English. Now, there's a small problem here. I'll show you what happens. We've got a lot of hits, 280,000 plus. So let's see what happens if we try and do a distribution here. That does it for us. Okay, that's great. So what we find is that, as expected, it's much more common in spoken than in written, nearly 10 times as common, and particularly in spoken conversation. So that kind of backs up our feeling that contractions are more common in spoken language than in written, and particularly in spoken conversation. And the contrast here is with academic writing, where it's least common. It still happens, but it's just much less frequently. So I think that's it really for the distribution tool. If you want to look for any other words, of course, you just go back here and write in your query.